All right, so grab your Bibles, turn to Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 32. That's where we're going to be this morning. In the adult class this morning, we were talking about Paul and the shipwreck that he was in. And then a lot of what we talked about in Hebrews is a lot of nautical language and sailing kind of language that's used there as far as like Jesus being the one who is the forerunner to lay the anchor for the hope in our soul and our salvation. And, in Hebrews chapter 2, he talks about how that we need to be fastened and to hold fast and not allow our faith to drift away. And so with a lot of these things kind of going on in my head, I wanted to come to Matthew 14, 22 through 32, where we look at Jesus walking on the water, and we look at Peter also as he walks on the water. And as we get to this account of what happens, right before they're making this trip across the sea, Jesus has fed the 5,000. And so the basic retelling there of that is that we have 5,000 men out in the wilderness, and that's pretty much all that they tell us. We don't know how many women or children were there. We just know there were 5,000 men that were there. And Jesus tells the disciples, y'all feed them. And they're like, with what? We don't have anything to feed them with. And so one of the disciples comes up and says, well, this boy here, he's got a couple of fish and some loaves. And so he takes the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, prays over them and breaks them, and they start handing them out. Well, after they fed 10,000-ish people, they had 12 baskets of leftovers, right? So there's no doubt that there's some form of miracle that had happened there, right? And during this time, obviously, Jesus is using the opportunity. He's teaching the crowd, that kind of a thing. But that's the miracle that's recorded for us right before they start going across the sea. So this happens, and then Jesus tells the disciples, and this is of the evening, right? So this is after all that has happened. He tells the disciples, y'all go ahead and get in the boat, and y'all head across the sea while I dismiss the crowd and tell them to go on about their way. And then, I'm getting into my story a little bit here. Then Jesus goes up on a mountain to pray. And he's up on the mountain praying while the disciples are going across the sea. As they're going across the sea, the wind is kind of contrary. The wind is blowing against them. And so they're struggling to try to get across. They're rowing, and they're making progress, but they're not making it very fast. And in Mark's account, it says that Jesus saw that they were making headway painfully. So they were struggling to make some headway to get across the sea. But Jesus is up on the mountain. He's praying, and he observes that they're struggling. Because it's not really too far, honestly, from every account that I've heard of the area that's there. And around the fourth watch of the night, which is around 3 to 6 a.m., is when Jesus gets done praying, comes down the mountain, and then walks across the water to meet them. So you think about it, they've had all day where they've been preaching and teaching and working with the people, feeding the people, and now they've been rowing all night up to 3 to 6 a.m. in the morning. That's a long day. That's a lot of work. You got to expect they are very mentally tired, very physically tired. And I would expect that Jesus would be as well. But he spent some time on the mountain in prayer, and now at 3 to 6 a.m., he's coming to walk toward them. And when the disciples see him walking on the water toward them, they respond, well, there's a ghost or it's a spirit. It's something that you don't see every day, right? We don't look out there and see, unless it's really cold and things are frozen, you don't see something walking across water, right? And so they are alarmed, right? They're scared by it. And then Jesus hollers out at them, and he says, don't be afraid, and basically saying that it's me, it's I. And so then, Peter, being the great scientist of the group, right, he's got to test it, right? He says, well, if it is you, then you ask me to come out on the water. Why in the world anybody would ever think that would be the way to test it? I don't know. Because if you're not sure if it's Jesus or not, and you're like, well, if it's you, ask me to come out, and I'll jump out on the water. Sometimes I wonder about Peter. But anyhow, Peter goes ahead and he gets out of the boat. And you just think about this. You're on the water, 1, period. And then 2, the wind is contrary, so it's blowing at you. So you've got waves, you've got things that are going. And then he just hops out of the boat. And then Peter starts walking on the water. To me, that's something that sometimes we miss. We so focus on him sinking and Jesus pulling him up, which we're going to get to. But Peter walks on the water. He's got his eyes on Jesus, and he sees him, he believes in him, and he's walking on the water. He's walking above the wind. He's walking above the waves. He's walking above all the chaos that is the sea, and he's walking toward Jesus. And then he takes his eyes off of Christ and he sees, right? It says that when he saw the wind, which the effects of the wind, right? He was afraid. And then he begins to sink, right? So his faith becomes challenged, right? And he begins to sink. And of course, he knows the source of his salvation. He knows the one who is able to save him. And so he calls out, Lord, save me. And so, of course, Jesus picks him up. Jesus reaches down and grabs him. And he gives him just a little bit of a chide here, right? He says, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And, at first when I was thinking about this, I was really more thinking that Jesus would be talking to the folks in the boat, right? Because none of them got out of the boat. They're like, "All right, Peter, you go ahead. Let's see what happens." But he's talking to Peter because Peter did walk on water. He did experience the amazingness of being in the presence of the Son of God. And yet he still doubted, and he began to sink. Anyhow, he reaches out to Jesus, and Jesus pulls him up. When they get on the boat, here's the deal. It says, "Truly, you are the Son of God." As I was thinking about this story, I thought about, obviously, we tend to use it as almost like a metaphor, as a parable to talk about the struggles of life and the difficulties of life, and then we keep our eyes on Jesus, and we can work through those things, and we can get through them. And I think there's a lot to that. I think there's a lot of good that we can glean from that, and I don't want to get away from that, but really and truthfully, when we think about what is the reason that this account is here, right, and we look at how it fits within the context and things of that nature, to me, the biggest reason is for those in the boat, right? Jesus orchestrated, he set up, he executed this whole event so that they would recognize that he is the Son of God. Many times they say it, right? We have early on, I think it's Nathanael who says it when he first meets Jesus. And then we have Peter's account like 2 chapters later here in Matthew where he says that, yes, you are the Son of God. But all of them right here in this instance recognize that Jesus is the Son of God. In Mark's account, he doesn't talk about Peter walking on the water at all. In Mark's account, what he talks about is when Jesus gets in the boat, everything calms down, and then everyone says, "Truly you are the Son of God." And right after it, he says, because they didn't understand about the loaves and the fishes. Right? They didn't understand and I don't know exactly if what was meant there, that they thought of Jesus as just being a prophet of God. Because they've seen prophets of God in the Old Testament raise people from the dead. They've seen prophets of God be able to provide food and provide sustenance. They've seen prophets of God teach with great authority, all of those things. But they haven't seen anything like this. They've never experienced anything like this. Jesus walking on the water in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the stormy waters, and then getting in the boat and then everything stopping. They hadn't experienced that before. And it's something where I think it was that next step that they all needed to go, "You are the Son of God." Right? And it's because of them recognizing that he is the Son of God that Peter was able to get out of the boat and walk. Right? They were able to, in the future, remember back to this time and draw on that encouragement as they encounter the struggles of life. Right? But why is it so important that they recognize that Jesus is the Son of God? Well, just a handful of things that I wrote down here, right? He is the founder and the perfecter of the faith. Hebrews tells us that in Hebrews 12. Jesus Christ himself is the cornerstone of everything. He is the cornerstone of Christianity, the cornerstone of our lives, the cornerstone of our salvation. Right? He is the cornerstone of all. He is the radiance of the glory of God in the exact imprint of his nature, of God's nature. Through him and his word, everything is held together because of his power, of his word. He is the first fruits of those who have been raised from the dead. He holds that preeminence. And, sometimes people are like, well, there were other people that were raised from the dead, right? You got the widow's son that Elijah raised from the dead. You got that random fellow that got thrown into a mass grave and his body touched up against Elijah's bones and he popped back to life. You got, Dorcas, who was Lazarus, obviously one of the more famous ones who was raised from the dead. But what happened to all those people that got raised from the dead? What happened to them eventually? They died again, right? It's almost like, really? I get raised from the dead to die again? Well, when Christ was raised from the dead, it was for eternity. It was for eternal life. He had received that glorified body. And just like we read in 1 John, I think it's 1 John chapter 3, as he is, so we will be in the resurrection when he returns. And so it's a glimpse, if you will, of what that glorified body is. And why else is it important? Because there's no other name given among men by which we can be saved. Acts chapter 4, right? Yeah, Acts 4 and verse 12. There's no other name by which we can be saved. Colossians, I'm going to throw it up here, but then I'm going to read it. Colossians 15, talking about the importance of recognizing Jesus as the Son of God. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones, dominions, rulers, or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. And you who once were alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds, he has now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death, in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach before him. If indeed you continue in faith, continue in the faith, stable and steadfast and not wavering. So Colossians 1 really points out the importance of why we recognize Jesus' position as the Son of God. It was supremely important for the disciples who were going to become the apostles, right? It was extremely important for them and everything that they were going to be doing. And it's extremely important for us today. If we don't recognize that simple fact, and we don't let it to resonate in our hearts, sit in that and allow it to actually truly change who we are, then we miss the whole thing. We miss it all. You know, we see that Peter was able to walk above the stormy waters. If we look back at that metaphor of thinking of the stormy waters as being like the struggles of life, right? Many times, I'm going to say myself, right? Many times I have held on to the boat. I have held on to the man-made way of getting through whatever it is that I'm struggling, right? And then there are many times that even if I did get out of the boat and got into the water, I was barely keeping my nose above water because I was doing it based on me, my ability, my strength, my discipline, right? My ability to read my Bible every day, to say my prayers every day, and to be good every day, and to say the right things and do the right things. All you're doing is barely treading water, if anything, when you're doing that and you're just slowly going down. Because it's not about us. It's not about our ability. It's about our faith in Jesus as the Son of God. It's our faith in him as being the preeminent one. It's our faith in him as being the one that is that true source of power, so that when we call on his name, he's right there waiting with his hand extended. He grabs us by the hand and lifts us up. And then when we're walking through the storms of life, we're not drowning. We're not trying to tread water. We're not trying to hang on to the boat. We're walking above the stormy waters of life. We're walking through those things in a way, in a manner that the rest of the world cannot understand. You know, that whole idea that Philippians talks about, where Paul says that you have that peace that surpasses understanding. When we can learn how to walk hand in hand and eye to eye with Jesus, we have that peace that surpasses understanding. It's when we turn loose, or when we look to the side, or when we look to ourselves. That's when we start sinking. That's when we start struggling. And the more we can learn how to turn loose of ourselves and turn loose of the world and grab onto Jesus, and again, holding him hand in hand and being eye to eye, now we can walk through all this junk. I mean, think about it. Jesus is walking on the water. They got the waves. They got the winds blowing. The guys in the boat are working those oars, trying to get across. And Jesus is just walking. It's like a stroll in the park. Doesn't mean the storm goes away. Doesn't mean the storm won't come. But we can walk through those things hand in hand, eye to eye with the Lord, and come through in a manner, in a way that just defies all logic of man. Because it's through him. It's in him. Because he is the Son of God. Because he is the one that made this for us. He is the one that has paved the way. He is the one that gives us this opportunity to have that. If we'll get out of our own ways, right? If we'll get out of our own minds, get out of our own head, and just simply allow the understanding of who Jesus is to change our hearts, to change our minds, and then change our lives. This morning, if you're ready to change your heart, your life, your mind, and walk above the stormy waters instead of drowning in them, Jesus is ready, hand extended. You need the prayers of the church, we'll pray with you. If you're ready to confess His name and be baptized in the watery grave of baptism, putting to death the old man of sin, being raised up that new creation, one that doesn't get drowned in the waters of the world, but one who walks above them. You have that opportunity now as together we stand and as we sing.